Hello, everyone. Today I'm interviewing George, who is a character in the book I wrote called Evil Lurking From Electric Chair to Kingdom Grace. George, thank you so much for meeting with me today.
I'm glad to be here.
George, I don't know if you know, but several of my beta readers, the people who read the various editions of the book, the various drafts, have commented how much they relate to you. In particular, the decision-making process that you engaged in while facing very difficult situations in your adult life. And I want to thank you so very much that you are meeting with us in person to tell us more of your story. And yeah, go ahead.
Well, I just grew up in a dysfunctional place that wasn't very nice. Where I grew up, it wasn't a very good situation.
Can you tell us more about it? What was your home life like?
Well, my dad was quite abusive and a drunk and quite abusive to us. He'd get drunk and start yelling and screaming at all of us. And it got so that I didn't even like to come home at night for supper.
Mm-hmm.
I'd delay my paper route and stuff. Even if I had a cold supper, it was better than coming home and have him yelling and screaming and everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm. How old were you at that time? Do you remember?
Well, just in my early teens, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Early teens.
Yeah. Yeah. So that sounds very sad when a child doesn't want to go home because, like, even miss dinner because life is so uncomfortable and so disruptive at home.
Yeah, like I said, it was very dysfunctional. There was a lot of
Mm-hmm.
yelling and screaming and fighting, and he was drunk and
Mm-hmm.
started yelling at us and everything.
Was your father? So you're saying to us? So your father was like that to the rest of the family as well? He didn't just pick on you.
Yeah, he did that to us all, especially my mother. He was very disrespectful to her. He'd slap her sometimes and expect
Mm-hmm.
her to do a lot of all the work, and he'd sit back and want to drink his beer and do
Mm-hmm.
nothing else, and expect her to do everything he told her to do. And
Mm-hmm.
so,
I'm sorry to hear that. That was no way to grow up, was it?
no, it wasn't. It wasn't a very good, happy family.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. George, I remember you telling us about a neighbor that you had. Can you talk to this audience about your neighbor, Mr. Mueller?
Yeah, I was friends with some of his sons, and I'd go over there quite often. It was it was almost like a place of refuge for me. He was a
Mm-hmm.
very nice man. He treated everybody nicely, and he wasn't drunk, and he wouldn't yell and scream and fight with his children or his wife. You know, it was just a great. I was just shocked at the difference between his family and my family, and
Mm-hmm.
I loved going over there.
Mm. I like the way how you portray it as a place of refuge.
Yeah, that's kind of where it was compared to my family. It was
Mm-hmm.
more like a war zone. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
the difference was so huge. At times, I was shocked to
yeah.
see him react with his kids compared to what was going on in my family.
So as you grew older, then it's like you had a decision. I mean, I understand we don't make these decisions consciously, right? Because normally our childhood environments they shape us for our future. But it seems to me like you had an option to kind of choose two different ways. You could go the way of your father, and the way of Mr. Mueller. Is that something you had considered at all?
Yeah, I such was so taken by the way the Muller family was that I thought if I grew up and had a family, I was going to be like make my family like his, not like my own family.
Hmm. Hmm. And what happened when you grew up? Did you actually have a family?
Yeah, I grew up. I met a beautiful woman, Gertrude was her name, and we were like we were made for each other. We fell in love and got married, and we had one son, Wolfgang. And I thought I was just like the, everything was just fantastic for me. I was very happy. My wife was too,
Hmm.
and I was determined to provide a very loving, stable home life for both
Hmm.
her and him, you know, and
Hmm.
everything was just great.
Well, I have to tell you, George, I did talk to Gertrude the other day, and she, I mean, she absolutely loved you back then, and she is was absolutely so impressed. And even I could see how she would agree that your home life was like a place of refuge, a place of love and kindness. Hmm.
Yeah, we both wanted the same thing. I think she realized some of my background and realized I didn't want anything like that happening in
Hmm.
my family. That I wanted to get away from it, you know,
Hmm.
and I was going to raise a
Hmm.
much different family.
Yeah, yeah. Made some very positive decisions there.
Yes.
Hmm. And what happened then, George? Can you fill our readers in? What happened during that time?
Yeah, well, authorities came one day without warning at all. They just knocked on our door and stole my kid, grabbed it right out of my wife's arm, grabbed him right out of my wife's arm and took him.
Mm-hmm.
And we were yelling and screaming, but they just told us to shut up
Mm-hmm.
and they'd left with him.
Mm-hmm. The authorities, can you explain a bit more about that? What
Well,
authorities came?
they were taking Indian people at that time, they were taking them out of their homes and
Mm-hmm.
putting them in residential schools.
Mm.
And they just did that. They just grabbed my son, Wolfgang, and just took him.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm very sorry to hear that, George. George, how did you react? What happened to you after that?
Well, I was very angry, of course. I wanted to kill him, but I couldn't do that. So
Mm-hmm.
I started coping in other ways. I used to maybe have a beer or two, but uh, in a hot afternoon, but I began to drink more and more.
Mm-hmm.
I spent all my time. I began to spend all my time drinking.
What happened to your job? Because you had a job, right, before?
Yeah, I had a job on the railway. It was a very good job. I was uh, paid a nice, good, livable wage. I was very proud at that time, able to support
Mm-hmm.
my wife and son in a decent manner. And
Mm-hmm.
but I lost it. I drank so much they got rid of me. They didn't want me around anymore.
Oh,
So
yeah,
after
yeah.
that, I left my wife too. I just uh, I just took off.
Hmm. You made it sounds like you made different decisions. Before, your decision making process was very positive and uplifting, and then all of a sudden you were making decisions that sounded more like they were spiraling you down into a different direction.
Yeah, well, I was very angry at that time. I didn't know how to cope very well,
Hmm.
and alcohol was what helped me cope. And I just began to drink more and more. I was living on the streets, eating garbage wherever I could, sleeping in apartment lobbies and getting kicked out of them. And I ended up in jail a few times for public disorder and drunk in a public place
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that too. So that's the way I started to live.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds very harsh. That's a very harsh way of living.
No, well, I was so angry at the time, it didn't matter to me. And then I got so far into alcohol that it
Mm-hmm.
didn't matter much anyway. I'd just do anything to be able to get another drink.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How did you get out of that life? What did you do?
Well, I kept drinking like that for quite a while, and I ran into some people. I guess that they were good people. Uh, they started taking me to these Bible classes and Bible sessions.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, at first, I just went because I was hungry. They had coffee and free snacks there and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and I to come for mostly because I could get something to eat, and
Mm-hmm.
but they didn't seem to mind. They just kept bringing me to them. They were pretty
Okay.
good friends, like, especially for the shape I was in at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wanted to be around me anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like, are you talking about Frank and Julie and Sally? I can think of those three people that you always hung out with.
Yes,
Yes.
those were Frank and Julian. They were very good people.
Yeah.
I was on the streets and they
Yeah.
kind of picked me up,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
I guess they suspected my motives for going to Bible class was more for a free lunch than anything, but
Yeah. Yeah.
they didn't seem to care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm so glad that they cared enough about you to to invite you and to look care of look after your needs at that time. So, what like how long have you been sober then?
Yeah, I managed to get sober after attending these Bible classes
Mm-hmm.
for a while. A few
Mm-hmm.
things began to sink in, and I began to take some other classes and stuff,
Okay.
and rehabilitation, and
Okay.
got some help. And I was sober for 10 years sober.
Oh, I'm so proud of you. That's
Yeah,
wonderful to
well,
hear. Wonderful to hear.
yeah, it was quite a accomplishment for me from living off the streets
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
being sober 10 years.
And not an easy feat.
Pardon?
Sobering up is not easy, is it?
Yeah, well, I decided I was going to reconcile, try to find my family, reconcile with them. I
Okay.
went looking for my son, uh, and then my wife. I suddenly found my wife. I was kind of keeping an eye on her, but she was just in a Bible class one day, and I decided it was time to kind of reconcile and try to get my family back together.
Hmm. Okay. So you went from making very positive decisions about your life, then for many years of making decisions that were more harmful to you, and to now where you're in recovery, you're 10 years sober, you're making more positive decisions again, decisions to reconcile and with your family.
Yeah, I wanted to reconcile. I think it was more like making amends for
Okay.
some of the harm I thought I'd done.
Yeah.
And it was part of the process of getting remaining sober,
Okay.
and staying happy about it and
Yeah.
dealing with the wreckage of my past.
Mm. How did that work out for you? Did you actually meet Wolfgang and Gertrude?
Yeah,
Oh yeah, you said you met Gertrude in the Bible study, right? Yeah.
yes, I met my son Wolfgang too. He didn't even know who I was. He was just a child when he was taken away. I
Mm,
told him who I was, and we talked a lot and stuff. And he told me some of the terrible things he was doing done, and I felt very disappointed, very sorry that I couldn't have been there for him.
mhm,
Maybe things would have turned out different for him if I'd have been there
mhm,
to help
mhm,
him and guide him.
mhm. George, what I hear you saying is that when Wolfgang told you about the bad decisions he made in his life, that you felt bad about that because you felt that if you had lived a different life, if you had lived life in a different way, he may not have turned out that way. Is that what I hear you saying?
Yeah, but he was taken away to the residential school too,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I think it did him a lot of harm too
yeah,
to be taken away from his family, and into strangers,
yeah.
uh, into a whole new life.
Hmm.
He wasn't very happy about that either, So I
Hmm.
think that was part of the problem too. He was a very angry person.
Sure. Yeah. And it seems to me like George, we briefly touched on how you had a neighbor that showed you an example of of a beautiful man who who's very helpful to his family, who's very supportive, and who's teaching them positive ways of how to live. But in Wolfgang's case, because it wasn't residential school, he received different kinds of modeling, didn't he?
Yeah, well, I don't think he had much modeling anyway from a residential school. He never had a
Hmm.
father figure, or,
Hmm.
he was just made to conform to the
Yeah.
white society,
Hmm.
and I think he was a
Hmm.
very angry person about that.
Hmm. Hmm. Do you think that's why it was easy for him to get caught up with a person who was in charge of the residential school there at that time, who was modeling to him very dysfunctional ways of living life as he became a teenager and beyond?
Yeah, well, I think he needed some guidance and
Hmm.
was very angry and stuff, and he was very susceptible to anybody probably that would come along to
Hmm.
offer him any help, and probably difficult for him to understand the difference between good help and bad help,
Right.
and being led astray, and
Yeah.
he probably didn't understand that too much. He just wanted some comfort and stuff and somebody to love him, So
Hmm. Hmm. George, the time that you met with Wolfgang that you're referring to, how did that go? How did that affect you emotionally?
well, angry about it all over again. It was pretty
Mm,
emotional because I thought he would have been a much better person, wouldn't have
mhm,
done those things if he'd have had me to guide him.
mhm.
Because I wanted to have the perfect family, and
Yeah,
here my family was destroyed,
yeah, yeah.
despite myself. So I was
Mhm,
quite angry again.
mhm. Any listeners, George, that have not read the book, they would not know what Wolfgang had done. Can you elaborate on that a little bit for them?
Yeah, well, I heard that he'd raped that woman and was going to go to jail, and
Hmm.
in fact, he died in jail. I was very angry about that too.
Hmm.
I thought that, like I said, I kept wishing that I could have been there for him, but
Hmm.
I realize now I couldn't.
Yeah,
They took him away from me.
yeah, yeah. And so what I guess I see kind of a theme in your life, you know, where you went from like a bad home experience to observing a helpful experience in a neighbor. Then, you know, the first few years of your life with your family were positive, and then you kind of had a very bad time for a long time. And where do you find yourself at now? What do you and Gertrude still talk?
Yeah, well, like I said, I met Gertrude. I was kind of keeping an eye on her, but she suddenly appeared one day
Hmm.
again in Bible sessions. And at first, I just kind of watched her from afar. I wasn't too sure whether I should approach her or not, but
Hmm.
uh, in the end, I decided to talk to her. She recognized me immediately too,
Hmm.
and it was a great reunion.
I'm so very happy for you. What kinds of things are you guys doing together? Like, are you reaching out to anyone, or is there anything you can tell our readers about what it's like after you meet, you know, your partner that you haven't been with for 40 years, and then you meet them, and then what kinds of things do you engage in, like family wise?
Well, we both uh, attend the Bible sessions
Hmm.
and classes and stuff, and
Hmm.
we both working on kind of reconciling with the past
Hmm.
and coming to terms with what happened to us. You know,
Hmm.
so we kind of help one and comfort one another, and
Hmm.
but we have different coping methods now. I don't rely on alcohol.
Hmm.
There's I found a God, and I learned how
Hmm.
to more depend on Him. You know,
Hmm.
rather than going out and getting drunk again.
Yeah, yeah, that's so good to hear. And George, I heard you tell the group. You know, I mean, I'm part of your group, part of your Bible study group, so I know some of these things. But I heard you say that Gertrude was out visiting your grandchildren and your daughter-in-law.
Yes, Wolfgang's wife, three grandchildren. I
Hmm.
was amazed at that. I didn't even know
Hmm.
because of the way I lived for so many years that I had any grandchildren. You know, and they were just amazing. Bruce is 25 years old now and quite a clean living, good young man. I'm very proud of him, but
Hmm.
I'm proud of them all.
Hmm.
But you know, it's amazing to have grandchildren.
Hmm. It sounds like you have accepted Bruce, whose mother's name is Donna. And I mean, Wolfgang brought great harm on Donna, which is actually one of the reasons why he's in jail. Um, so you have accepted Bruce as your grandchild?
Yeah, he's still my grandchild. You know, it's a terrible thing that Wolf did to his mother, but we try to uh,
Hmm.
reconcile with the past, and we accept him as part of the family. He's a fine young man. I'm
Hmm.
very proud of him.
Hmm. Yeah. Wow. It's beautiful to see how George, how you have overcome such a tragic past, really.
Yeah, well, I had a lot of help along the way. The friends that first brought me into the Bible
Hmm.
sessions, and
Hmm.
you know, and helped me along and stuff and pulled me off
Hmm.
the streets. So, and I had a higher power too, I guess, a God that looked after me.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I wouldn't have survived probably.
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds like maybe your life has come full circle, where it was really bad with a good influence, to now where you're dealing with a lot of bad things, but you have you have a new way of living life, a more positive way of living life. Do I see that correct?
Yeah, my life is more positive now. Uh, Despite what I've been through, I'm a much better person now. I don't. I stopped drinking, and
Mm-hmm.
I take good care of my wife, and I love to take care of my grandkids and to be with them and
Mm-hmm.
show maybe be a model for them like I couldn't be for my son.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And George, are you in any way involved in the helping community at all? Like, do you tell your story anywhere, or what kinds of things do you do to help your community, if anything at all?
Yeah, I still quite involved with the group, with helping people that are
Mm-hmm.
sobering up and stuff. I
Okay.
try to tell them my story,
Okay.
and if they can, somebody helps somebody from it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's a way to say that my life hasn't been totally wasted.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're giving back what you have received to help others.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, George, is there anything else that you would want to let our listeners know about your story, from pain and suffering to where you're at now, and are there any recommendations that you have for people uh, who are or were in a situation similar to yours?
Well, yeah. There is a better life. There is a solution. Uh, you know, if you're fortunate enough to find somebody that's reaching out their hand to you,
Hmm.
take it and try to find a better life if you can.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, thank you very much, George, for meeting with us today. And I look forward to our listeners to posting some comments about you, and maybe they'll even email and ask some more questions about your life. And maybe they even have uh, questions about how they could get help, right? And I'll be sure to pass them on to you so you can further help the community.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, thank you so much, George. Many blessings.
Yeah, it was a pleasure being here.